Hi, this is episode number 40 of Gen X Amplified, and today I have a great chat with Rodney Bullard, who is the Vice President of Community Affairs at Chick-fil-A Incorporated and the Executive Director of the Chick-fil-A Foundation. And we are going to be unpacking his new book titled Heroes Wanted: Why the World Needs You to Live Your Heart Out. Can't wait for this. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
I hope that we take it upon ourselves to say that as Gen Xers, that our time is now and that we have to fix as many of the problems as we can.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified, where we bring you inspirational and entertaining conversations with successful Gen X leaders and entrepreneurs.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials to help you amplify your story,
Maximize your impact,
and become Gen Exceptional in business and in life.
Now, here's your host, Adrion Porter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Gen X Amplified. This is the podcast and platform dedicated to inspire and empower Gen X and mid-career professionals to maximize your impact at work, in business, and in life. As always, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and for your time. So my guest today is someone I consider to be a leader's leader. He is currently the Vice President of Community Affairs at Chick-fil-A Incorporated and the Executive Director of the Chick-fil-A Foundation, where he leads the company's corporate community and philanthropic strategies. Now, before arriving at Chick-fil-A, he served as an assistant United States attorney, during which the United States Attorney General presented him with the Department of Justice Director's Award for his service. Wow. Now, he was also selected as a White House Fellow, which is the nation's most prestigious public service fellowship. Now, a decorated veteran, he also served in the United States Air Force, I believe it's JAG, Judge Advocate General Corps, eventually working at the Pentagon as a congressional legislative liaison in the office of the Secretary of the Air Force. Now, as an author, he has recently released a compelling and groundbreaking guide on how to become a hero, which is actually titled Heroes Wanted: Why the World Needs You to Live Your Heart Out. So everyone, please welcome my Gen Exceptional guest, Mr. Rodney Bullard. Rodney, how are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding, my friend. Thank you for having me on.
It is definitely my honor and a pleasure. You are doing some amazing things. I actually met you and heard about you through a fellow colleague of mine that also works with you at Chick-fil-A. She was telling me your story, and I quickly grabbed a copy of the book, and I tell you, I was totally amazed, and it's such a great read, and it's a pleasure to have you on, especially as someone who I consider to be an exceptional Gen X leader. And I'm so excited to chat with you about your journey and about this book.
Thank you, my friend. I'm honored that you picked up the book. And I'm honored that you looked through it as well.
Awesome. So speaking of story and journey, Rodney, what we like to do on this show is, we love to make an impact to people in our generation, really all generations, but specifically to Gen Xers, mid-career professionals, people that are in our generation. And we also love to be inspired by stories, because I think what really helps to make an impact is to hear people that's gone through many changes and have been successful as a thought leader, to hear your journey and your professional story. Can you just take us through, Rodney, your professional and personal story and what led you to become the leader that you are, especially in the world, in the job that you're doing at Chick-fil-A?
Yeah. So I'm really blessed, and I'll start with the end. I'm blessed to be here at Chick-fil-A and to lead philanthropy at Chick-fil-A through the corporate foundation, the Chick-fil-A Foundation, and through community affairs. Mm-hmm. But I started out in Decatur, Georgia, in South Dekalb, and a neighborhood that was extremely diverse. We had our challenges. We didn't know we were poor, and we didn't know what we didn't have. But we got a chance to see a host of things. We had Black people and white people and Hispanic in our neighborhood. And I loved the tapestry of our neighborhood. And I loved even more the encouragement and the nourishment that I received from people who I went to church with, from the teachers and my principals. I love the tight-knit community that I grew up in. And frankly, it wasn't that long ago. And I think back that there aren't that many communities like that left, at least not enough. And, that community set me off on a path to believe that I could do anything if I set my mind to it. And so I went off to the Air Force Academy, played football at the Air Force Academy, majored in pre-law. At the time, Johnny Cochran was my idol. I wanted to be everything Johnny Cochran. And so I went off to the Air Force Academy, majored in pre-law, and also went out for the mock trial team. And I recall my senior year at the Air Force Academy, I had blown out my knee. I wasn't able to play football any longer. And I went out for the mock trial team, and we ended up being one of the most successful mock trial teams in the country. That led to a scholarship at Duke Law. And I loved my experience at Duke Law. And again, the bedrock experience of my neighborhood and my community just taught me that leadership was important, and that even more so, I had the right to be a leader, that I didn't have to ask anybody's permission, that I didn't have to go out and just dream about it. I could be a leader, and I could figure it out. And that confidence, I think, is great. And that confidence, not cockiness, not boastfulness, but the confidence to know that we all have a leader in us, all of us. We may lead differently, but we all have a leader in us. And so I did a number of things at Duke Law, ended up being the commencement speaker, the student commencement speaker, left Duke Law and went back into the Air Force, United States Air Force, and tried cases throughout the Air Force. And then I applied for a program called the White House Fellowship. And that program was really pivotal in my career. But what I recall keenly about it was when I was applying, I told my boss at the time, I said, "Ma'am, I'm applying for the White House Fellowship." And she was familiar with the program. And she said, "Well, Colin Powell was a White House Fellow, and Sanjay Gupta was a White House Fellow, and Tom Johnson, former CEO of CNN, and all these people," she said, "their programs for superstars." And, what it reminded me is that even though I may have confidence in myself, others may not share that. And I can't allow someone else's limitations or their perception of limitation to really guide me and to limit me. And so I told her, "Well, ma'am, yes, it is for superstars. That's why I'm applying." And so I applied to the program and it got into the program and really had a wonderful experience. Hurricane Katrina hit when I was doing the program. And it was a formative experience for me to see a community, a city in crisis, but also how business co-opted with government could respond. And so left there and went to the Pentagon after my time as a White House Fellow, was a legislative liaison for the Secretary of the Air Force, meaning I was basically a lobbyist for the Air Force to Congress, and enjoyed my time there. While I was a White House Fellow, I also worked for NASA and was working for the head of NASA, the administrator of NASA, and that was an amazing experience. How many times do you get a chance to work with astronauts and see the space shuttle? And so that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And then I came back to Atlanta, in part because at the time, my wife said, I'm tired of moving around, and Atlanta's home for us. And so I knew exactly who my CEO was, and I came home. And we came back to Atlanta, and I worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office here. And that was a great experience working for Sally Yates. Sally Yates and Dave Namias. Dave Namias is on the Georgia Supreme Court. Sally Yates, as your listeners may recall, became the United States Attorney General. And that was a great experience that led me to my work now, because at some point Sally said, "I want to do more in the community than just put people in jail." And she asked me to lead that effort. And our work in the community here in Atlanta led to me being recruited by Chick-fil-A to come to lead and start the Chick-fil-A Foundation and start community affairs at Chick-fil-A. And we've done that for the past 6 years. And I say all of that because in many ways the story sounds circuitous. But I think that we're put in places where we may not exactly know what's going to happen, but we have to grow where we're planted. And I think we have to make opportunity even beyond our jobs. And we have to make relationships even beyond our jobs because they do lead from one thing to the next.
Wow, you're absolutely right. And just thinking, you actually ended off where I was going to try to unpack more key word, and that is relationships. Because just, Rodney, thinking about your story, hearing and then thinking about your story, you've had a lot of great milestone events that I'm sure you would not have achieved without nurturing and cultivating key relationships. I mean, to be able to work for the head of NASA, to become a White House fellow, to become a commencement speaker at your alma mater at Duke. I mean, all those things, you just can't raise your hand and easily walk through the door and say, I am this. So it sounds like you've recognized early on, and you continue to recognize and act on and execute on the value of key relationships. Is that correct?
I think that's right. I remember someone told me long ago that, your altitude will be determined by your attitude, and that your relationships really are your currency in life. And I think a lot of it comes down to just how you treat people. That if you treat people well, regardless of their station, regardless of what you think you can get from them or what you can't get from them, then relationships tend to fall into place. Oftentimes we are too Machiavellian, too opportunistic. And what that does is it leads us to miss relationships. I've gotten as much from secretaries, executive assistants, janitors, professionally, as I've gotten from the head of NASA. And they've helped move me because sometimes they're the doorkeeper. Sometimes they're the ones who tell you the extra secret, or you should know this, Rodney. And so I found that really relationships are key. And the first step to relationship is to treat people the way you want to be treated.
That is so right. Going back to your early story, because this definitely had a lot of experiences. Football, you mentioned that you played football. What position did you play? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I was a defensive tackle.
Okay.
And I played in high school. I was a pretty good defensive tackle in high school. I was recruited by several schools, colleges.
Wow.
And chose the Air Force Academy in part because they had a great football team, top 25 football team, and strong academics and a mock trial team and a pre-law program. So it all made sense to me. But I blew out my knee 3 times, man.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a tough gambit with football in college. But, I've really, truly do believe this, that when one door closes, the next opens. And sometimes one door opens just to get you to that next door.
Right. That is so true. And you mentioned too, which I love the line, you should grow where you're planted. Yes. I believe that's what you said. Like sometimes, obviously, a lot of times we're placed in different situations where we may not have anticipated it or planned it, or it was not part of our journey that we wrote out, or the famous line by Mr. Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get knocked out or get punched in the face. I believe that's what it was. But what you've been able to do, Rodney, is really
on somebody's ear.
That's the question. Where were you that night? Everyone can remember that night when we saw that crazy.
I do not know where I was, man, but I saw Evander Holyfield, man. I saw him probably maybe about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, that's right, because he's in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, he lives in Atlanta. So
right.
I was looking at his ear. It's not that bad. It looks good.
Wow, that is so funny. But no, man, it's really interesting because. And again, I think everyone everyone has to put their own life in perspective. And a lot of times we look at someone else and we want to emulate them and copy them. And sometimes that emulation turns into jealousy and say, oh my God, they're doing so well and I'm not doing as well. And I think about your life. Like, obviously you've done some amazing things. And for me, I'm very inspired because your journey is not my journey, but your journey inspires me to just always make sure that I grow where I'm planted, because trust me, I would never blow my knee out because I would not even get on the field. I'm not that athlete, man. And a lot of the other things that you have done have been really, to me, staples of true leadership. And just thinking about the White House fellow opportunities. So you mentioned some key names like Colin Powell. I mean, these are household names. Sanjay Gupta, Tom Johnson, I believe, at CNN. And so what that did, and it sounds like that really propelled you and inspired you to say, hey, if these guys can do it, I can do it too. And you mentioned growing up in South Dekalb, you always, for a while, had that burning desire and confidence that you could achieve whatever you wanted to achieve as long as you put your mind to it.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to go back to something you said, my friend, because we often compare ourselves, and comparison is the thief of joy. And there's always someone who has something that you may desire. There's always someone who you may think is done more than you. I think about Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
And I think that Truett Cathy didn't start Chick-fil-A until he was 46 years old.
Wow.
Now, put that in perspective of, so many of us who think that our lives are over because we aren't 30 or we aren't 40 and we aren't internet billionaires and we haven't done X, Y, and Z. Truett Cathy, when he died at the age of 93, was one of the wealthiest men in the country. So, I'll take that timeline any day. And so it's important for us to recall that and to think about that in our own lives.
Did you say 46? Did you say?
46 when he started Chick-fil-A. Now, he had started a restaurant before.
Right.
But the concept of Chick-fil-A itself, and Chick-fil-A as you know it today, wasn't started until he was 46.
Okay, see, I'm so glad you said that, because that literally just helps just really validate the premise of what you're living and what I'm trying to do with this movement, this podcast, and just to say, hey, it is never too late. 46, I mean, that is literally in the middle of the quote unquote Gen X generation. And so for those of you who are listening, all those chicken sandwiches that you're eating, not on Sundays, but just think about the creator and the founder of this brand, this entity, did not start until he was in his mid-career phase in life. So that is a true case study and testament. I'm so glad, Rodney, that you brought that up. So speaking of heroes, let's get into this book. So Heroes Wanted. And is this your first book?
This is my first book. Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. That's a great first book, man. So Heroes Wanted, subtitled Why the World Needs You to Live Your Heart Out. And I must remind my listeners, or tell them if they haven't gotten a book, in which they will pick it up very soon after listening to this. If you haven't, the word you in that subtitle is also highlighted and emphasized. So this is a book directly for you. So Rodney, why did you feel that the world really needed this manifesto, this guide at this time?
I think the world needs this. I think our society, our American society in particular, needs it at this time, because we are so divided. We are so polarized. And there's so many things going on in our society that are wrong and that do need attention and that do need voice. And oftentimes we are good at sitting back and we're good at complaining about something, but we don't at the core have the confidence or the feel that we can do something about it, or we don't feel like we have the real responsibility to do something about it. And in my own life, despite all that, God has blessed me to do more recently, when I was in first grade, I had a difficult time reading. I had a first grade teacher by the name of Mrs. Adams who went above and beyond and told my mother she wanted to tutor me after first grade because I wasn't reading on a first grade level when I graduated from first grade. And because she did that, I was reading 2 and 3 grade levels beyond my peers at the end of the summer. And so by the time I got to second grade, even though in first grade I was behind, by the time I got to second grade, I was ahead. And, Mrs. Adams didn't have to do that. I wasn't her responsibility, particularly during the summer. School had ended. I wasn't her child. But she had the ability, the confidence, and she took responsibility for my learning. And so in a very macro sense, we should be doing that as well for others and for other issues and causes and for our communities.
Oh, that's a great story. Is Mrs. Adams still around by chance or no?
I don't know where Mrs. Adams is. I have stalked. Her son was named Chandler, and he was about my age.
Okay.
I've stalked several Chandler Adams. I did know Mrs. Todd, who was my second grade teacher, and had the pleasure of working with her son, who was in law enforcement. I don't know where Mrs. Adams is.
Yeah, because I would pray and hope that she or someone in her family hears this, because that is a really great story. And I do. It's interesting that recently I've heard many stories just about how much teachers have impacted certain people's lives. And I think about my own journey, and that particular one, Mrs. Adams, she recognized the challenge in you at the time, and this is really early on. And like you said, she didn't really know you. She didn't have a responsibility outside of the student-teacher relationship to go over and beyond what she typically would do as in that relationship. And she did that. And the fact that she spent the time to nurture you, to cultivate the skill of reading with you, saw the deficit, and then propelled you to go 2 grades beyond what was expected in the second grade. That is a truly amazing story. And I pray and hope that somehow she or someone close to her will be able to hear that story and your gratitude towards that. That's really interesting. Now, thinking about just, going back, and this really correlates with the book too, your teacher, your mother, your parents, growing up at a young age, did you always have that benchmark of leadership and becoming a hero? Was it cultivating you early on? Or was it something you developed over time?
It was cultivated early on. My father is a Baptist minister, big man, giant man. My father played for the Denver Broncos, and my father went to Morehouse College.
Okay.
And my father really taught me and instilled in me this sense of giving back, this sense of helping everyone, and this sense of equality, that everybody was equal, regardless of whether you were a millionaire or whether you were walking up and down the street 1,000,000 times looking for something, that everybody was worthy of my time and attention and my respect. And so this sense of heroism, that's what really heroism is giving back, that is helping others, that was definitely instilled in me by my father. And my mother has this sense of resilience that I think is part of being a hero as well, because all of us will be knocked down, I promise you. And the resilience to get up and the resilience to say this is not where my story ends, I think that's very important.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is very important. Rodney, the core outline of the book are what you call, I believe, the 9 C's of an heroic heart. Can you explain this concept and tell us, the listeners, exactly what are the 9 C's, letter C, the 9 C's of heroism? Yeah.
So the concept of the 9 C's, one, I just like the number 9. So it's one of the reasons 9 C's.
Okay.
But the concept of the book is really anybody can be someone else's hero. We all have the ability and the responsibility to do so. Additionally, the book is a guidebook on how to do so. And so these are the characteristics of a hero. And they are calling, commitment, compassion, connection, conviction, community, courage, charity, and confidence. And I think about each one of these C's when I think about what goes into a hero. Mm-hmm. I particularly think about calling and conviction in my own life. That conviction to me is when you see something and you know that's not right. Mm-hmm. It is a heart to make a difference. I see that there is something that needs to be changed, that a difference needs to be made, and that tears at me. I'm convicted by that. Calling is when you answer that conviction. It's a heart of purpose. And I know that I have to do something purposeful to change what is wrong. And so I think those are elements of a hero. I also, in the book, leave blank pages at the back of the book deliberately. Because as you mentioned earlier, the you and the world needs you to live your heart out is emphasized. And so we each have a story of a Mrs. Adams. We each have a story of someone who has given and invested to and in us. And we need to write those stories down. But even more so, we need to write our calling. We need to write our conviction. We need to write down those stories of our community as well so that they can inspire us to be a hero.
Yeah, that is really great. And when you were coming up with these 9 C's, first of all, I want to know, was it hard to try to come up with the 6th or the 7th, the 8th or the 9th C to come up with them? Or was it really easy just based on everything that was in you to write the book? And did it just flow, or how was that challenge?
So the writing of the book itself took about a year and a half. Okay. It was in stages, in spurts. And it was born out of a collection of speeches. And, the seeds were there. Mm-hmm. And I had a wonderful publisher, Harvest House Publishing. And so at some point, the publisher, we both sat down and said, hey, you know what, maybe there are a bunch of seeds that we can put together. Because we already had some of it. Right. We had community and courage and conviction. And so I think finding the seeds, there are some other seeds that other people think of from time to time. So we probably could have found more. But I think that these are probably the central ethos of a hero.
Yeah, I think there are the central ethos. You mentioned speeches. So were these speeches that you were actually presenting?
Yes, okay. They were. They were speeches that I was presenting and I continue to present. Okay. In fact, I spoke yesterday to the Atlanta Rotary. Which is a collection of some of Atlanta's top leaders. And yes, it's important, I think, that we get this message out. I want the book to, one of the reasons why I wrote the book is because I couldn't speak to everybody. And so the book can carry that message that my voice can't. And I really do hope that it is a clarion call for us to be good to one another, for us to be more confident in our leadership and our role here in society, and for us to cross division and divide.
Yeah, I read the book. It is that guide. And, one of my favorite sections, Rodney, of the book, and there were definitely many, was when you wrote about how to connect with love. And you broke them down into, I believe, love offerings that spelled out the word love: listening, openness, vulnerability, and I believe empathy. Can you just briefly talk about that, how you broke down that word love into those different love offerings and what inspired you to do that?
Yeah. So what inspired me to do that really was a story from Chick-fil-A. The book is not about Chick-fil-A, so I don't want to give that impression to any of your listeners. Mm-hmm. But when I first got to Chick-fil-A, we had a community service project, and we took the staff from Chick-fil-A, and we all went to the King Center, the Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. King Center here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And we were there at Ebenezer, the church that Dr. King famously pastored. And we were doing things in the community. We were preparing and talking about going out into communities. And we had a question and answer period. And I remember one young lady raised her hand and she said, hey, how do I connect to a community that frankly is different than me? How do I connect to a community that frankly I have some discomfort with and that I'm not familiar with? And my question was a genuine question. It was a very genuine question. And my answer back was, be a friend. Show the love that you want someone else to show you. And so out of that, came the acronym. But really, notwithstanding the acronym, it really is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that mere activity, that mere thought, helps us do that. There's another part of the book that I'll talk about as well, that we often say, well, I can't do that because I only have so much time, or I only know so much about this community. I only have, and I only really is said in a manner of limitation. But the book, it requests that we think about that only in a different way, that we turn it on its head and say, only I can go into this community. And maybe there's somebody in this community that only I can reach. And only I can speak to my experiences, and only I can give this lesson, and only I can teach this, and only I have this skill, and only I. And if we think about ourselves being the only I have this love to give, then I think that that's important for us to reframe.
Well, I really like that approach, only I, and it definitely underscores just the focus of the way the book is written, the emphasis of the word you, the vernacular, just the entire premise about really this being a guidebook and a manifesto to challenge us as people. Challenge us, get us out of our comfort zones. Because I think when people do think about heroes, thinking of someone that's living in Wakanda or saving kittens out of trees, and that tends to be the narrative. And yet what this book does, what you do in your day-to-day activities, and all of us are aspiring to do, especially even more after reading this book, is everyone can become a hero, and to challenge us, to get us out of our comfort zones, to think that there's this wide gap between where we are now as mere mortals versus where we can be as just heroes. And I love how you are really unpacking this further in this conversation and articulating the fact that, look, you need to be challenged. You have a hero inside of you, and just think about how you want to be treated. And just the most simple, smallest, but most powerful things, such as going to a parent of a child and encouraging them to just stay a little longer. And I would work with you to help you read better, can mean the most in life. So that is really amazing. What I really want to do, because these are such valuable nuggets and tips, is to really apply them in this conversation to the primary audience of this podcast and a lot of what I try to do. And again, just to clarify too, everyone, no matter what age, you can find value in this conversation. But specifically when we talk about people that are in that mid-career phase, generationally, Gen Xers, Generation X, there are challenges and there are opportunities. And it's my mission and purpose is to unpack and amplify those opportunities. But think about becoming a hero, whether in your home, as a parent, as a caregiver, as a leader in your job, if you are approaching C-suite or you're in middle management, or someone is looking to launch a business. All of these different dynamics that are very prominent when it comes to Gen Xers. How, Rodney, would you say can the principles of Heroes Wanted be applied to help encourage, empower, and inspire Gen Xers to become more effective leaders and to create massive impact?
Yes. So I think the principles of the book, I hope, do two things, or maybe three. I hope that the principles of the book give us greater meaning, because at the end of the day, our lives, particularly at this age, we've seen enough to know that life is fleeting and that it does have some end. But we also know that we have a lot of runway ahead of us. And so I hope that the book gives us this sense of we have to seek first meaningfulness, and that we have to seek meaningfulness for our own lives and the purpose of our lives. I hope it also gives us great confidence that we can do anything, and that the experiences that we've had thus far prepare us to do even more than we've done thus far. And that the best is yet to come if, in fact, we believe in that, hold on to that, and strive for that. And finally, I hope that we take it upon ourselves to say that as Gen Xers, that our time is now, and that we have to fix as many of the problems as we can. We won't fix them all. We will always have problems on this earth. But we can fix some of them while we have the mantle, while we have the stick. And, in many ways, you and I talked about this offline, Gen Xers are kind of the forgotten generation. Boomers are big and looming and still around in some cases. And millennials get all the attention in the news and in the press. But Gen Xers, they make these Marvel movies and these recreations of Transformers for us, because that's what we played with when we were kids. And right now, we have an opportunity because of our age to be in charge of some things, to be able to direct some things. And I think it's important that we are mindful in doing that and meaningful in doing that. So really, that's what the book, I hope, imparts.
That is all awesome. I love the way you broke that down, and it's so important. And there were some key nuggets that it really maps to the opportunities that we as a generation we have. I mean, I love you really hit it head on when you said our time is now. And to your point, we are that forgotten generation. We did talk about that, and I. Even in this show and in the intro or some of the things that I do when I speak or when I coach and consult companies on generational activities or when I'm coaching other mid-career professionals, I remind them and I remind myself that, hey, yeah, we are in the middle of these two behemoth generations that also can provide a lot of value in life. There are virtues in every generation. But to your point, Rodney, we are sometimes forgotten. But sometimes within the forgotten, there's the unforgettable. And there are so many things that we can do being in the middle. There's magic in the middle that we can uncover. There's the virtues of being a bridge builder. There's, to your point, Rodney, we have experience. We have seen a lot of things, and those are assets. I mean, those are things that we just can't brush under the rug. And you illuminate that so well in this book, and you talk about heroism. To me, I mean, when you have more notches in your belt and more experiences, I mean, the type of impact that you can have as a hero can be much greater than it could be. Even not to say that young people can't be heroes, but I'm saying it could be much greater than it could be when you are younger and you have less experience, because you can shape from your different perspectives and experiences and expertise, impact much greater. And also great confidence. We can do anything. And I noticed that, Rodney, in your life and throughout the book, that's also another word I mentioned earlier, relationships as far as the dynamic, but confidence. And I think you did allude to it earlier, that confidence, but not cocky, I believe you said. Yeah. There's a lot of confidence within you. There's a lot of confidence that you are looking to instill in others to become a better hero. Have you seen challenges within people or just in general of lack of confidence that somehow inhibit us as individuals to become the hero that we can be?
Yes, without question. There's a wonderful quote that I took away from the White House Fellowship. President Bush was giving a speech, George W. Bush, and he said that our children, and he was speaking in relationship to children of color, suffer from the soft bigotry of low expectation. Mm-hmm. And the byproduct of low expectations is a lack of confidence, that I don't expect to do great things in my life, that I don't know if I can do that. And we have such a crisis of confidence, particularly in communities of color, but not throughout, not just in communities of color, throughout, where we don't think that we can do something, or sometimes we don't try. Or sometimes we worry about what somebody else thinks, or sometimes we listen to what others say about us, and we let their words, their jeers, limit us and hold us back. And at the end of the day, and maybe it's, I do believe it's a matter of the nurturing that I received when I was younger. I have to live this life. I only have this life, and it's the only thing that I do have. And so I have to be confident that I'm going to use it to the best of my ability, from my own personal standpoint, for my God. And I'm wonderfully and fearfully made. And so, regardless of what shortcomings we have, because we all have them, we all have shortcomings. None of us are perfect. And so, despite our shortcomings, we all are capable. And because of our shortcomings, we all are empathetic, and we all can relate to getting up after being knocked down. But we all can get up.
We all can get up. I love that. And because of our shortcomings, we know that we can get up. And even though we get knocked down, we always can get up. I love that the way you framed it. I mean, confidence is something that can really enable us to achieve the goals that we need to achieve. And as long as we know that we can get up, know that we can do this, you mentioned this, only I can. Man, these are so many great tips and nuggets. And I do encourage everyone to get this book. Now, before I let you go, there is a question that I ask all of my guests at the end of the episode, and I'm going to ask you, and I can't wait to hear your answer. So are you ready?
I am.
All right. So Rodney, if there was a song that would play every time you enter a room or when you walk down the street that perfectly fits your story and the brand of Rodney Bullard, what song would that be? What would be your own personal theme song?
At the risk of sounding cocky, I've always loved this song, but Ain't No Stopping Us Now by McFadden and Whitehead.
Classic.
Classic, yes.
That is when that song comes on, you just got to dance, right?
Yes, you got to get up, man.
Oh, that is a great choice. Ain't no stopping us now. We're on the move.
That's right. I love that song.
Oh, that is a perfect song. See, as soon as you said it, I'm hearing it in my head. I just gotta I'm bopping my head right now. Great. So Ain't No Stopping Us Now. You hear that, everybody? Gen Xers, Gen Exceptionals, mid-career professionals, ain't no stopping us now. Ain't no stopping you. Rodney, this has been truly a great conversation. I've been inspired further, even during reading the book, after reading the book, and now just having this chat with you. I've been inspired to really unlock and amplify the hero inside of me, whenever needed. Rodney, can you let our listeners know the best way they can keep up with all the great things that you're doing and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to rodneybullard.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Rodney Bullard, or Facebook at Rodney Bullard, or LinkedIn or Twitter, again at Rodney Bullard, Bullard. And you can also go to rodneybullard.com and get Heroes Wanted, or Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and order Heroes Wanted book. And so I hope that you do. I hope you go out and get the book. Again, Heroes Wanted book, foreword by Lecrae. Shout out to Lecrae. I appreciate his support of the book.
Yeah, definitely shout out to Lecrae. Yes. Speaking of music, right? Wow. So you heard that, everybody. Please go out and grab a copy of, or two or three, or for your teams, if you are a manager or leaders, or for your family. Just if you can't, just go out and grab a copy of this book, Heroes Wanted. Remember, as Rodney stated so eloquently in this conversation and throughout the pages in the book, the world needs heroes like you. And I know that everyone that's listening has a heroic heart that's waiting to make massive impact on the world. Thank you so much, Rodney. It's been truly a blessing chatting with you and our Gen X Amplified audience.
Truly my pleasure, my friend.
Take care. Yes, that was the Gen Exceptional leader, Rodney Bullard, the VP of Community Affairs at Chick-fil-A Incorporated and the Executive Director of the Chick-fil-A Foundation, and now the esteemed author of the must-read book, Heroes Wanted. Wow, I feel so much like a hero after that conversation. I'm ready to fly high in the sky. So again, as always, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And to get the full show notes and catch up on all the other episodes of Gen X Amplified, please go over to our website at genxamplified.com. And remember, you can also find Gen X Amplified on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And also check out my website at adrionporter.com to learn more about me, what I do, and my mission, and also how I can help you build your brand and maximize your impact. Again, you've been listening to Gen X Amplify, the personal brand development podcast dedicated to you, the powerful and exceptional generation between the boomers and millennials. Remember, it's more than a podcast, it's a movement.